The silent return. The archives chamber of the Galactic Conclave was rarely visited. Most species preferred to access the vast repository of galactic history through neural interfaces rather than physically entering the dimly lit vault with its tangible data crystals and ancient terminals. But Council Elder Vrax found comfort in the antiquated methods. His six-fingered hands glided over the tactile controls as he accessed the human archives, a collection largely untouched for centuries. Humanity's disappearance remained one of the greatest mysteries of galactic history. 317 years ago, every human colony, outpost, and vessel had gone silent within a span of 26 hours. 9 billion souls vanished without a trace, leaving behind empty cities, abandoned ships, and countless unanswered questions. Vrax had made this pilgrimage annually since becoming elder, a ritual of remembrance for a species that had shown such promise before their inexplicable extinction. The Conclave had declared their territories protected historical preserves, though that hadn't stopped various member species from quietly exploiting the resource-rich worlds over the centuries. Elder Vrax, a voice interrupted his contemplation. Your presence is requested in the emergency council chamber immediately. Vrax turned to see his aide, Telix, trembling slightly, his gelatinous form rippling with agitation. What has happened? Vrax asked, rising from his seat. The monitoring stations in the Sol Preservation Zone have detected activity. Vrax's four hearts quickened their pace. What kind of activity? Energy signatures, Elder. Thousands of them. And transmissions in human languages. The emergency council chamber buzzed with the nervous energy of 19 representatives from the dominant species of the Galactic Conclave. Holographic displays showed real-time feeds from across what had once been human space. Strange vessels orbited former colonies. Lights flickered in cities that had been dark for centuries. And on Earth itself, massive structures were appearing that defied conventional engineering. How is this possible? Demanded Representative Cal of the Orion Combine, their metallic exoskeleton clicking nervously. A species cannot simply reappear after 3 centuries of absence. Yet the evidence is before us. Vrax replied calmly, though his inner hearts raced. Humanity has returned. Are we certain these are humans? Asked the Tellurian ambassador, their vine-like appendages coiling anxiously. Could they be some other species claiming human territories? The answer came as the central display changed to show footage from a Conclave observation vessel. A sleek ship of unmistakably human design, though far more advanced than anything they had possessed before their disappearance, hovered near an abandoned outpost on Mars. The camera zoomed in to show figures moving outside the vessel, bipedal, two-armed, with the characteristic head shape of humans, though something about their movements seemed different. They're reclaiming their old outposts and colonies, reported Admiral Zex of the Conclave Security Force. But they're not responding to our hails. They simply ignore us. This is unacceptable. The Vexeri representative slammed a clawed appendage on the council table. The Vexeri Empire has established mining operations across 3 former human systems. These operations are vital to our economy. Perhaps, Vrax suggested carefully, we should attempt to establish diplomatic contact before jumping to conclusions about their intentions. The central display suddenly flickered, and every communication device in the chamber activated simultaneously. A calm, measured voice filled the room. To the assembled representatives of the Galactic Conclave, I am Admiral Helena Vega of the United Earth Fleet. Humanity has returned from its involuntary exile. We seek peaceful dialogue regarding the transition of our former territories back to human governance. Please respond on this frequency to establish diplomatic channels. The message repeated once before silence fell over the chamber. They're hacking our secure systems, Admiral Zex whispered, aghast. That's impossible. Our quantum encryption. Clearly, Vrax interrupted. We are dealing with a humanity that has evolved significantly during their absence. He straightened his ceremonial robes. I will lead a diplomatic mission to meet with these returned humans. The meeting location was a neutral space station at the edge of what had once been human territory. Vrax's diplomatic vessel approached cautiously, escorted by 6 Conclave warships, a precaution he had argued against, but been overruled on by the more militaristic council members. "Unidentified vessel approaching," reported his pilot. It simply appeared, Elder. No warp signature, no distortion field. On the view screen, a ship materialized. It bore the streamlined aesthetics of human design, but seemed to shimmer with an internal light that made its edges difficult to focus on. It was approximately 3 times the size of Vrax's vessel, yet moved with an agility that defied its mass. "They're hailing us," the communications officer announced. On screen, Vrax ordered. The image of a human female appeared. Dark skin, close-cropped silver hair, and eyes that seemed to contain impossible depths. She wore a simple uniform of deep blue with minimal insignia. "Elder Vrax," she said with a slight inclination of her head. "I am Admiral Helena Vega. Thank you for accepting our invitation to dialogue." "Admiral," Vrax replied, noting that she had known his name and title without introduction. "The Conclave seeks to understand your sudden reappearance and your intentions. Perhaps we should discuss this face-to-face," Vega suggested with a small smile. "Your escort vessels can remain at a safe distance if that provides comfort." The meeting chamber aboard the station had been configured with a large circular table, a human tradition for diplomatic negotiations, Vrax recalled from the archives. Admiral Vega entered with 3 other humans, a tall male with pale skin and silver eyes, a female with features suggesting East Asian ancestry, and a third whose skin had an unusual bluish tint. "Allow me to introduce Science Director Marcus Chen, Security Chief Alessandra Novak, and Dimensional Navigator Eli Okafor," Vega said, gesturing to each in turn. Vrax had brought a small delegation representing the major powers with interests in former human space, a Vexari mining official, an Orion military attaché, and a Tellurian cultural liaison. They all watched the humans warily. "Where have you been?" the Vexari official demanded before Vrax could begin with more diplomatic inquiries. "How does an entire species disappear for 3 centuries? The one called Eli Okafor smiled slightly. When they spoke, their voice carried an unusual harmonic quality. "We found a door that wasn't meant to be opened, and when we went through, it closed behind us." Science Director Chen activated a holographic display showing what appeared to be a tear in space itself, swirling with colors that hurt Vrax's eyes to look at directly. "In 2189, our scientists discovered what we now call a dimensional rift near Jupiter," Chen explained. "It appeared suddenly, defying all known physics. We sent probes, then ships to investigate. What we found was another dimension where physical laws were different. The entire human species went through this door." The Orion attaché asked skeptically. "Not intentionally," Admiral Vega said. "The rift was unstable. It expanded rapidly, enveloping Earth and our colonies within hours. Every human across our territory was pulled through. We couldn't stop it." "On the other side," Chen continued, "we found ourselves in a place where time moved differently. What has been 317 years for you has been approximately 40 years for us. And you've spent these 40 years doing what? Planning your return?" the Vexari official asked suspiciously. "Surviving. Adapting. Evolving," Vega replied simply. "Our bodies changed in response to that environment. Our technology developed along entirely new principles. And yes, we searched for a way home." "How did you return?" Vrax asked, fascinated despite the tension. "We learned to create our own rifts," Okafor said with obvious pride. "Controlled ones. We can now move between dimensions at will." Vrax felt his 4 hearts skip beats simultaneously. The implications were enormous. A species that could move between dimensions, that had evolved in an environment with different physical laws. "What exactly do you want?" he asked directly. "Earth. Our colonies. Our space," Vega stated simply. We understand others have built lives there. We're willing to give them time to relocate, or they may apply for citizenship in human territory if they wish to stay. The Conclave won't simply hand over settled worlds. The Vexari official sputtered, his mining operations clearly at the forefront of his mind. Security Chief Novak, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. With respect, she said, her voice soft, but carrying an unmistakable edge. We aren't asking the Conclave's permission. We're offering a courtesy because, despite our transformation, we still value diplomacy. Then why talk at all? The Orion attaché challenged. Because we're still human, Vega said. We still value cooperation, understanding, and peace. We'd rather find a solution that works for everyone. But make no mistake, we will reclaim what is ours. As the meeting continued, Vrax realized that humanity's return wasn't just an inconvenience or a political challenge. It was the beginning of a fundamental shift in the galaxy's balance of power. When he returned to the Conclave, his report would be simple and sobering. The humans have changed. What they experienced in that other dimension has transformed them. They aren't the same species that vanished 3 centuries ago. They've become something more. And they are going to reshape our galaxy, whether we cooperate or not. The New Dawn, the observation deck of the Conclave flagship Eternal Vigilance, offered a panoramic view of the confrontation unfolding before them. Admiral Zex stood with his 4 hands clasped behind his back, watching as the Vexari battle fleet, 37 warships of various classes, formed a blockade around the human colony world of Terra Nova. The planet had been renamed Vex-Terral after the humans' disappearance, and had become one of the most profitable mining operations in Vexari space. The humans approach, his tactical officer announced. On the view screen, 5 human vessels appeared, seemingly from nowhere. They were smaller than the Vexari dreadnoughts, but emanated energy signatures that defied the sensor's ability to categorize. The Vexari are hailing the human vessels, the communications officer reported. Put it through, Zex ordered. As a neutral observer representing the Conclave, he was here to document the encounter, not intervene. The image of Admiral Corax, Supreme Commander of the Vexari fleet, appeared, his scaled skin darkened with anger and his jaw crest fully extended, a sign of aggression. This is your final warning, humans, he snarled. Leave Vexari space immediately or face destruction. On a split screen, Admiral Helena Vega appeared, looking as calm as she had during the diplomatic meeting days earlier. Admiral Corax, we have no desire for conflict. We are simply reclaiming what was ours. Your people will be given safe passage and fair compensation for any permanent structures. Nothing here is yours anymore. Corax snapped. These worlds have been Vexari for centuries. We built these cities, we established these mines. You built on our foundations. Vega interrupted gently, using our technologies, mining our resources. I'll ask one final time. Will you allow peaceful transition? Never. The channel closed abruptly. Moments later, the Vexari fleet opened fire. Thousands of plasma torpedoes and energy beams converged on the small human flotilla. Impact in 3, 2, 1. The tactical officer counted down. But there was no impact. The weapons fire seemed to pass through the human vessels as if they weren't there, or as if the ships existed partially in another state of reality. They've deployed some kind of phase technology, the science officer reported in awe. The Vexari weapons are passing through them without affecting normal space-time around the ships. What happened next occurred so quickly that later reviews of the sensor logs had to be slowed down to understand the sequence of events. The human vessels released what appeared to be small drones, hundreds of them, each no larger than a personal transport. These drones accelerated toward the Vexari fleet, passing through their shields as if they didn't exist. Upon reaching each Vexari vessel, the drones simply merged with the ship's hulls. No explosions, no visible damage. But one by one, the Vexari warships went dark, their power systems failing completely. Within 7 minutes, the entire Vexari battle fleet was disabled and drifting. "They're hailing us now," the communications officer whispered, his voice tinged with fear. Admiral Vega's face appeared on the screen once more. "Admiral Zex, please inform the Conclave that we have disabled but not destroyed the Vexari fleet. Their life support systems remain functional, and we will assist with recovery operations. We had hoped to avoid this demonstration, but perhaps now the Conclave will understand our sincerity when we say we prefer peaceful transitions." 3 days later, the full Conclave Council convened an emergency session. The Vexari fleet had been towed to a neutral repair facility, their ships completely intact but utterly depowered. Initial reports indicated that the human drones had somehow altered the fundamental properties of the Vexari power cores, rendering them temporarily inert through a process no Conclave scientist could explain. "This is an outrage," the Vexari High Chancellor bellowed, his crest fully extended in fury. "They attacked sovereign Vexari territory. After you fired upon them," Vrax reminded him gently. "They have declared war on the entire Conclave," the Orion representative insisted. "They have done no such thing," Vrax countered. "They specifically limited their response to disable rather than destroy, and they've made no aggressive moves against any Conclave facilities or neutral territories." Elder Vrax, the Tellurian representative, interjected, vines twisting anxiously. "While I appreciate your efforts at diplomacy, the fact remains that these humans possess technology that renders our defenses meaningless. They could disable any world in the Conclave at will, which is precisely why I've invited them to address the Council directly," Vrax announced, causing immediate uproar. Before the protests could gain momentum, the central platform illuminated, and 4 figures materialized, not through conventional teleportation, which would have triggered multiple security protocols, but through some other means that bypassed all Conclave defenses. Admiral Vega stood with her 3 companions from the earlier diplomatic meeting, looking entirely untroubled by the hostile glares from many of the assembled representatives. "Honorable members of the Conclave," she began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber without amplification, "I thank Elder Vrax for this opportunity to address you directly. We regret the necessity of the demonstration with the Vexari fleet, but we felt it important to establish clearly that military opposition to our return is futile and unnecessary. You claim to want peace while displaying overwhelming force," the Vexari Chancellor accused. "We displayed restraint," Security Chief Novak corrected. "Had we wished to destroy your fleet, we could have done so instantly." Science Director Chen stepped forward, activating a holographic display that expanded to fill the center of the chamber. It showed a swirling dimensional rift, similar to the one they had presented to Vrax's delegation, but far larger. "While in dimensional exile, humanity encountered something that you need to know about," Chen said gravely. "The dimensional plane we were trapped in wasn't natural. It was engineered, a pocket universe created by a species far older than any of us." A hologram shifted to show shadowy figures with impossible geometries that seemed to hurt the eyes of everyone watching. "We call them the architects," Chen continued. "They'd been creating these pocket dimensions for billions of years, studying how different life forms adapt to altered physical constants. We were simply their latest experiment." "How did you escape?" Admiral Zex asked, professional curiosity momentarily overriding his wariness. Dimensional Navigator Okafor smiled slightly. "We learned from our captors. The dimensional technology we now possess, it's adapted from theirs. We not only escaped but discovered that we aren't the first species they've experimented on." The hologram changed again, showing a map of the galaxy with dozens of points highlighted. "These are dimensional weak points," Okafor explained, their voice carrying that strange harmonic quality. "Places where the architects have created rifts before or are likely to do so in the future. Every species in this galaxy is at risk of being collected for their experiments." A hushed silence fell over the chamber as the implications became clear. "You're saying these architects could make any of our species disappear at any time?" the Tellurian representative asked, their vines having turned a pale green with fear. Yes, Admiral Vega confirmed. And while we've learned to traverse dimensions and protect ourselves from being taken again, the rest of the galaxy remains vulnerable. Convenient, the Vexari Chancellor sneered. You invent an invisible threat and position yourselves as the only protection. In response, Admiral Vega simply nodded to Okafor, who made a subtle gesture. Instantly, a small rift opened in the center of the chamber, a swirling tear in reality that pulsed with unearthly light. Several representatives flinched back in alarm. This is a controlled dimensional aperture, Okafor explained calmly. Through it, you can glimpse the plane where humanity was trapped for 40 years, our time. They gestured toward the rift. Anyone is welcome to examine it with your sensors or even send a probe through, though I wouldn't recommend physical passage without proper protection. The Conclave's senior science officer approached cautiously, scanning the rift with various instruments. It's real, they confirmed, voice trembling. A genuine rupture in space-time, leading to a dimension with altered physical constants. Admiral Vega waited for this to sink in before speaking again. We did not return simply to reclaim our worlds, though that remains our intention. We returned to warn you and to offer an alliance. The architects will continue their experiments. Other rifts will open. Other species may vanish. But together, we can develop protections. In exchange for what? The Orion representative demanded suspiciously. The peaceful return of our territories, Vega stated simply, and cooperation in establishing a new defensive network across the galaxy to detect and counter dimensional incursions. And if we refuse? The Vexari Chancellor asked, though with noticeably less hostility than before. Then we will reclaim our territories anyway, Security Chief Novak said matter-of-factly, and do what we can to protect the galaxy without your assistance. But the task would be easier with cooperation. Elder Vrax, who had been silent during the presentation, finally spoke. You've had 40 years to adapt to dimensional technologies. How long would it take to extend these protections to the entire conclave? With full cooperation, perhaps a decade, Science Director Chen estimated. Without it, much longer, and with far less certainty of success. The council chambers erupted in overlapping conversations as representatives debated amongst themselves. Admiral Vega and her team waited patiently, seemingly unconcerned by the chaos they had created. Eventually, Vrax called for order. I propose we establish a joint commission to verify the human claims regarding these architects and to begin preliminary work on defensive measures. The motion passed with a large majority, even the Vexari abstaining rather than voting against it. As the formal session concluded, Admiral Vega approached Vrax privately. A wise first step, Elder. You could have led with the architect threat, Vrax observed, instead of the territorial demands. Vega smiled slightly. Would you have believed us without the demonstration of our capabilities first? Vrax considered this. Perhaps not. Your transformation is remarkable. Are all humans now capable of dimensional manipulation? To varying degrees, she acknowledged. The dimensional plane changed us at a fundamental level. Our perception, our physiology, even our understanding of reality itself has evolved. And your ultimate goal, beyond reclaiming your territories and establishing these defenses. Admiral Vega looked out at the stars visible through the council chamber's vast windows, her eyes reflecting depths that seemed to reach beyond normal space. Humanity's exile was painful, but it gave us perspective. We once thought the greatest frontier was the space between stars. Now we know it's the space between realities. The architects aren't the only beings out there in the multiverse. Elder Vrax, there are wonders and terrors beyond imagination. She turned back to him, a look of determination crossing her face. We want what we've always wanted, to explore, to understand, to connect. But now, the frontier is infinite, and we intend to face it not alone, but with allies. As Vrax watched the humans depart, simply fading from view, Rather than using the chamber's transport systems, he reflected that the galaxy had irrevocably changed. Humanity had returned from their long silence, not as the struggling young species they had been, but as something new, evolved, transformed, and positioned to reshape the fundamental order of galactic society. The age of dimensional understanding had begun, and humanity would lead the way into this new dawn.